the delay there. Morning, Coach. I'm curious, what is your evaluation of Miller Moss's first 5 games? And pretty consistently, you've said you just want to roll with that one quarterback. Is that still the plan going forward? Could we ever see Jaden come in and be a change of pace QB?
Yeah, good morning. Sorry for the delay too. Don't mean to hold you guys up. No, I think Miller's played well. He's given us a chance to win every single game. I think he's progressing quickly. He is undoubtedly our starter and will be going.
Jack?
Hey, Lincoln, one of your calling cards when you were hired was just the track record in terms of wins and losses. And it's kind of the first prolonged stretch where you've been in a slump in terms of just solely wins and losses. Since you don't have that past experience to go back on, what can you lean on? Who can you lean on to learn how to get out of this little bit of a slump?
Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I agree with you on slump, but it's your question, so you can term it the way you want. Yeah, I mean, I think we're building a program here, like I've said many times before. I don't get real caught up in what happened the week before or what's happening the week ahead. Our job is right now in the moment is to build and prepare each week and try to put out a team that is capable and likely of winning as much as we possibly can. And we've got our head down, we're working, we're continuing to build. This team has had an opportunity to win every game up to this point. We've won a couple. We had a couple that were disappointed we came up short. We're getting ready to play a great opponent this week and really excited about that opportunity.
Joe?
Hey, Coach, thanks for the time. So you coached against Andy Kotelnicki a few years ago when he was at Kansas and you were at Oklahoma. What do you remember your impression of him and his scheme
Oh.
being back then? And now that you've been getting familiar with Penn State's offense, what is it about Kotelnicki's system that sticks out to you as an offensive mind and makes it challenging for an opposing defense to prepare for?
Yeah, I think he's a really, really good coach. They, did a tremendous job at Kansas. Really, turned around that program, brought life into that program that honestly hadn't had it in a while. I know Andy was a big part of that. Yeah, I think the thing that I've admired the most watching him both there and early here at the time at Penn State, I think he just does a great job using his personnel and finding different ways. They certainly have a system you can tell that they believe in, but they're creative with their personnel to try to create advantages on the field or put their people in best position to succeed. And it just looks like he's got a great feel for that. And I think you always look at guys' flow as far as play calling and critical moments or how they adjust. He certainly does a good job of that as well. But the one thing that stuck out to me is just I think he's very creative in using the personnel.
Luca?
And again, kind of a two-parter for you on Woody. When you guys were looking in the portal just originally for kind of a veteran, back at all the options, in terms of looking for a workhorse and maybe projecting that from him, what made you so interested in him? And then also just knowing how much influence Mike had, on you and still has over the staff. Was there any sort of connection, knowing how much he kind of valued Woody's toughness, in his time at Mississippi State and wanting to bring a guy like that in?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing we valued at the beginning was we thought there was really consistent production, and then when you turn on the tape was impressive against really good competition. And I think there was kind of a feeling that if this guy could stay healthy, that he could really do some good things that could really flourish in our offense. And certainly, once we got to get around him and his family, you could tell that he was just a hardworking, no nonsense kind of about the team kind of guy. And so we really appreciated kind of the mindset and the character behind him. And then, yeah, I think, all of our Mississippi State connections, I think certainly, were a factor. Just, I think you have that next bit of reference on the kind of player he is, the kind of person he is, what he's like in the locker room, his toughness, right? All of those things. And we had a lot of people that, had experience with Woody. And I think anytime you recruit somebody out of the portal, especially somebody that you maybe didn't know much coming out of high school, you're always trying to find those different touch points so that you can get to know them because the process is so jam-packed. So I think having that gave us even more reassurance that he was the right guy for us.
Jude?
Hey, Coach. Just a injury update on Jacoby Covington. Will we see him this weekend? And if not, who is going to be his replacement?
Yeah, Covington will be questionable. He's been limited this week, progressed a little bit faster than maybe we would have thought after the Minnesota game. I think we would have all guessed like it was probably a for sure no for this week. So kudos to him and the training staff for pushing it along, but certainly has been limited. And if not him, I mean, you certainly look at John. You're talking about DeCarlos. Obviously, Jalen's flexibility gives us, I think, the opportunity to do some different things. I think profit certainly factors in there as well. So I mean, we've got a number of bodies certainly that can jump in there and handle it, and we've got some different options because of some of the versatility of the pieces that we have.
Crash?
Coach, if Eric Gentry's forced to redshirt this season, are there any players that you're going to turn to or rely on to step their game up to fill his void on the void that his presence will leave on defense?
Well, I mean, if that does happen, then yeah, I mean, I think a couple of things. One, I mean, I think it's everyone's responsibility to continue to step up and up their games and continue to play at a high level. Eric is a good player, but also kind of an emotional spark plug for us. But we've got other guys certainly that can feel that need and have that energy, kind of that infectious energy about them. And so certainly rely on them more. And then I think it provides, opportunities specifically for some of these young guys like Desmond, like Newbie. I think guys like that are young and talented and getting some opportunities and getting a lot of reps here, practice and developing quickly. So I think there's Eric. Obviously did a lot of different things for us, but it does open up opportunities in a lot of different ways, and that's part of the season, right? You're gonna have some guys in and out of the lineups, and the best teams are able to overcome, losing somebody or not having somebody available, and have players on the roster that continuing to step up, and that's what needs to happen for us.
Brian Young?
Hey, Lincoln. What's your strategy in coaching young players through a costly fumble like with Quentin last week? We didn't see him carry the ball after that. But how does that extend into future weeks? How do you kind of manage that with him?
Well, there's a fine line, there's a fine line. There's mistakes that you can, live with in a game. There's some that are very detrimental. I mean, ball carriers, when you have the football, I mean, there's not much room for error just because turnovers are so, they're so hindering on your chances to win. I mean, obviously that was a massive play in the game, and certainly not blaming it all on Quentin. There's many other plays in that game, but job number one, if you're a ball carrier, we got to finish the down with the play. And so Quentin's a good young player. We're never going to, certainly toss a guy away after one mistake, but they've got to show progress, and they've got to show that, all right, I made this mistake once. It's not going to happen again, because we tell our players all the time, there's no player that's good enough that you can live with excessive penalties or excessive turnovers. Like that, it doesn't matter how many good plays you make. If you do either one of those things, like it can never equal out, and you're always going to be in the negative. It's always going to hurt the team more than it helps the team. So I believe Quentin will learn from it and grow, and we're going to push him. We're going to work on the things from a fundamental standpoint and expect him to improve and be much better for us going forward.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Antonio?
Lincoln, you've spoken about the offensive line build and all of that a lot this year, and relying less on the portal moving forward. I was just curious, how do you balance the fight or fight off the urge to try to find immediate upgrades versus having patience with the young guys when the payoff might not come till later in the season, or maybe even their second year playing? Yeah,
that's kind of every college football coach's the inner push-pull right now. Listen, there's not a guarantee either way. There's certainly not a guarantee with the portal. I mean, I think in time, I think the portal is a lot of times a bigger risk, as a little bit we saw last year. Sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't. I think when you develop over time, your roster is going to develop. You're going to know these guys, and I think you're going to have a lot less gambles and you're going to build it in the way that you want to build it. And so, at some point, and you see this happening. I mean, you see examples of this all over the country. Like it's at some point you either got to decide, are you going to be a portal team that brings in a few high school guys and relies on that portal every year, or are you going to be the other? And if you're gonna, especially for a program that was restarting like us, which a lot of other people were not, you got to kind of make that decision, because if you're gonna really lean on the development, like it's got to start somewhere, and you got to plant your flag in the ground and say this is what we're doing, and that's what we've done. We're not saying we're not going to use it, but we're not going to be overly dependent on it. If we do it, we're going to try to make sure it's the right need and the right guy. But I feel that is the right thing for this program as we continue to push forward, and we know what we want to be, and at some point you got to decide that's what you're going to be.
Ryan Karshi.
Hey, Lincoln. I wonder, from a play calling standpoint, what would you say is the hardest lesson you've just had to learn over the years as a play caller?
Good question. And there's a lot. I think you're continually learning them, because things change. Rules have changed. Obviously, your players change. The defenses are change. The type of games. I would probably say that's a really good question. I think probably just adapting to the skill sets, and then adapting to like how games are played and what gives the team in the moment the best chance to win. And that's different because everything factors into that, right? Your special teams, your defense, the opponent, the style of game, how many possessions you're getting, who you have. Like there's so much with it. And I enjoy that part of it, but I think I think for any play caller on any side of the ball, I think that's always the challenge. And that's why we put so many hours into it and prepare as hard as we can to try to be ready for any of those scenarios and put our guys in the best position that we can.
Thanks.
We're going to try to spread the love here because there's so many hands. Jordan.
Hey, Coach. I know obviously you have 2 losses this season, but there are both games where it went down to the final minute. When you guys are getting in those situations where it's a fourth quarter in the fourth quarter, it's close, it can go either way. How are you kind of maintaining with your team that, like, hey, like, yes, we've lost some games, but like we're still in it like every single time, like, so we can turn like those fourth quarters into like win at the very end, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we've done it as a team, right? We did it against a really good opponent in LSU. We know that we're capable, and that's not a question in our minds. We've played some good opponents that we provide some challenges against them, and they provide some challenges for us. I mean, and I think, ultimately, you go back and you have those teachable moments, from these games, and you show these guys, what you did well. Why did you put yourself in position to win? If you did win it, you go back and you talk through the LSU game and how, we made a great stop defensively after giving up an explosive play. And then we had obviously the drive there to end it. And then we ended the game on the picks on the pick. And then you show the opportunities in the Michigan game. You show the opportunities in the Minnesota game. You constantly learn and grow and evolve. And that's what these seasons are. And these teams just adapt and they grow and they learn. And so, yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly a confidence and excitement. I mean, is there some frustration that we didn't finish those off? Sure, there is. Of course, there's. We want to win worse than anybody else wants us to win. I promise you. But no, we're still a very confident team. I mean, this isn't some team that has 2 losses where we got our ass kicked. I mean, that's not the case. Like we know what we're capable of, and we know we got a really good opponent and a phenomenal opportunity coming up here Saturday in the Coliseum.
We're going to wrap it up with the 2 people that haven't asked questions yet. So Shotgun.
Hey, Lincoln, confidence is something that doesn't get talked about too much, but can have such a big impact, especially with 18 to 22-year-olds. So how do you go about trying to rebuild a player's confidence when they get a little bit of a slump?
Well, I think number one, you have to know the player, and I think it comes down to your relationships with the players because I don't know that it's a one answer, a one size fits all situation. You've got to know your guy. You got to know, who they are mentally, what makes them tick. And I think that's, again, um, even going back to the portal question from earlier, another situation where you get 2 or 3 years invested with a guy versus a guy that you've known for 6 months. I mean, that you talk about, you get in these situations, another benefit of having, people in your program that have been here for a long time. But no, I think that's our job as coaches. I mean, sometimes you do schematics, sometimes you do scheduling, sometimes you're Dr. Phil. I mean, like there's a little bit of everything. And so, no, I think that there's got to be a sense of reality because you can't hide from reality, good or bad. But sometimes what's on the outside is not reality either. And I think just getting them to see, break it down simply, take the emotions out of it. What are you doing well? Let's keep accelerating that. What are you not doing well? All right, what is the plan to address the areas that we're not doing well? And then you go to work. And I think it's you keep investing in them as people, you keep investing in them as players, spending extra time with them. And a lot of times when you do that, these guys are able to make the improvements that you have inside of them. So you got to have a staff that leans heavily on that. That's really good at it, and I do think that's one of the many advantages that we have here.
And we'll wrap it up with Ryan.
Hey, Coach. Thanks for the time as always. Last week UCLA was able to hold Penn State to their lowest rushing total, 85 yards. Obviously, you're not going to share game plan or schematics, but what did you maybe see from the tape that they did so well that you can kind of carry over into your matchup with them?
Yeah, no, they did a good job. I thought they, did a good job early in the game. I thought that, that was important. You played, started off well, defensively. And I think anytime you can do that, specifically in the run game, that's very important. So, I mean, I think, getting off to a good start, trying to, and doing the best you can to limit the explosive plays. That's, again, we know defensively for us, that'll be a massive key. And so, we got to play a better game up front. Certainly than we did against Minnesota. That was probably that was the least effective game that we've had on the defensive front this year. We've got to get back to playing like we did in the other 4 games, and that'll be incredibly important. And then we have to do a great job, our second level guys, our third level guys, of getting ball carriers on the ground and make sure that if they do have a good run, it's an 8-yard gain, it's a 9-yard gain. That'll be critically important in the run game.
Thanks, Coach.